Okay, for today, it's just a review of solving equations. The only thing that's more complicated is the x is now in the argument. Do you remember how that's the argument spot? Please don't chat right now. So if that's the argument, do you remember that spot's called the what? The base, and this spot over here is called the exponent. Because when you rewrite it, you would say 1/2 to the 1/5. You see how the 1/5 became an exponent? Equals x. Do you remember in the very first day of logs on the little exit quiz, it said a log is a blank. A log is an exponent. Because when you've done the log part, this is the log part, then you have the exponent. All right, the number on the right is always the exponent. See, it goes right there. All right, so this part, the mistake people made on the test sometimes was that they would not put this in parentheses. Another mistake they made is thinking that the negative in the exponent would make the answer turn out negative. It doesn't. What does a negative in the exponent do again? Makes it flip, okay? So this one, if you actually did it, it would be 1/5, or sorry, 1/2, or you could have typed in 0.5. Then you put in the caret, and then you have to have parentheses just to be sure that that doesn't think, oh, do it in two parts. You want to divide, or you want to put it to the 1/5. Again, decimals would have been smart because then you can't really mess it up. 0.5 to the, and the, sorry, that's a caret. 1/5 is 0.2. 0.5 to the 0.2. You have it yet? If you haven't already, grab your graphing calculator. Calcs are allowed on half of the worksheet for today. I'll pause for a second while you get that out. Find the decimal. Turn it my way. I'll tell you if you're right or not. Okay, so looks like about 0.871. What does that mean? That means if I put a 0.871 right here, 871, it should work. All right, what does work mean? That means that if I put this to the that, I should get this. Or another way you could say it is that if I do log base 1/2 of 0.871, it should give you 1/5, which is about 0.2. Why wouldn't it? It wouldn't be exactly 0.2 if you actually did this on the calculator. Log base 1/2 of 0.871, because you rounded it. And if you round, you're not going to get a perfect answer like 1/5. You're going to probably get like 199, which is really close to 0.2. Or wait a minute, that wouldn't be 0.911 or 991 or something like that. Anyway, I should say this again. 0.2 would be like 0.199. There we go. Maybe I had it right in the first place. Anyway, the point is, I know it won't be 0.2. But would you please type in log 0.871 divide by log 0.5? Because that's another skill here, putting in numbers like that and changing their base. Log 0.871 over log 0.5. It was 0.19. I thought it was either going to be like this, or it was going to be like this, something like that. It was not going to be exactly 2. Why? Because we rounded it. We know it's got to be close to 0.2 because 1/5 is 0.2. Okay, so when you get to the most complicated problem on today's homework, I just want to remind you of something. There's one like that on today's, which really isn't that scary if you're allowed a calculator, because you can do this part. In fact, you don't even need a calculator. You can do that part in your head. In fact, I bet I can do it faster in my head than you could do it with your calculator. What is it? 2. Done. Why? Because what's 49 really? 7 squared. And that means that if these two are the same, that's the answer. Remember that part? So if that whole thing is 2, 2 times this 2, 2 times this 2, is 4, and 4 minus 15 would be negative 11, right? 4 minus 15. Negative 11 equals 2x minus 5. Then you add 5 to both sides. You'll have negative 6 equals 2x. Then you divide by 2, negative 3. There we go. Any questions on that one? That was this big, scary looking one. But all you really had to do was simplify this part. It was the same thing on one of your homework, or on one of your test questions. This is not the test question, but it was something like this. Log base 9 of like 13 equals 2x plus 4. And a lot of kids got confused and they were like rewriting it as 9 to the 2x plus 4 equals 13 and like trying to figure out what the heck to do next. You don't do it that way. You just do it on the calculator because it's a calculator allowed part. What would that be? Log 13 divided by log 9. Get a decimal. And then it's really simple from there. If this is like 2.1 or whatever, then you just add or subtract 4 and divide by 2. The point is, these can be done. You don't have to always rewrite the problem. Granted, rewriting works almost every time. All right, one more common mistake in general is people have this, and they go 3x to the 7th equals 5. It's so innocent in, you know, like, it's this to the this equals that, right? What's the little thing I just did wrong that would goon you in the end and give you a wrong answer? It needs parentheses. Why does it need parentheses? Well, this will force me to do the power next. Whereas if there weren't parentheses, what should you do next? Divide by 3. So there's a difference in the order and therefore a difference in the answer. If you forgot to put parentheses here, that's going to be painful. And then the last thought is another thing that we can kind of review at this point. When you come down and you get an answer like, let's see, x to the second equals 8, you remember how, oh yeah, I got to square root both sides, and that means, you know, you square root both sides, what does that mean? Absolute value, and therefore 2 answers, right? But a lot of people were smart enough to remember that, but not smart enough to remember that if you get a negative answer, when you plug it back in here, the negative answer won't really work, will it? Because you have a negative in your base, and therefore it doesn't work. All right. So the only thing that's new for today is that the x is usually in the argument. So log base 3 of 2x equals, let's say, 2. Did you try solving that one? Do you think it needs parentheses somewhere? Oh, yes, it does. Sometimes the parentheses really won't matter much, and other times they matter a lot. But you should always know where you should put them. Three to the second equals 2x, and the only thing that had 2 parts here was that right there, and that needed a parentheses. Now again, does it really need it this time? It really won't make any difference this time, but on some of the problems, it does make a difference. Okay, so then the next part is, this is squared 3 squared is just 9. 9 equals 2x, x equals 4.5, or 9 divided by 2. Any questions? All right, this is all review. It should have been, generally should be easy stuff. Let's actually start your worksheet together. Everybody go and find it. I'm going to pause for a second, and then I'll show you what the worksheet looks like. Okay, so here's the homework. It's worksheet logs day 6. Where we're headed next is we're going to talk about different bases like base E. We're also going to do a day on application questions, which are like word problems that have logs in them. And you're also going to learn how to graph them. We do all of that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week. Then on Monday, you have a test on logs, which is a lot like the quiz you just took, plus some of those things we just learned to learn, like how to do word problems that have logs, how to do graphs that have logs, and log base E. All right, so that's stuff you're going to learn soon, but we aren't learning today. Okay, so 9. Oh wait, the research does show that if I give you a little preview, that you will understand it better. If I go log base E of 2 equals x, it's the same exact kind of problem as before. If I told you what E was, it's the same exact thing. E is just a number, kind of like pi. You know how pi is always 3.14 and you've pretty much memorized that? Got a new one for you to memorize. E. E is 2.718. 2.718. And if you know that, by the way, there's a button on your calculator for E. Did you know that? It's right above the divide key. You are correct. Everybody get that on your screen and then just hit enter. It's right above the divide key. Mr. W, would you read me the whole thing? What is E? All right, and this is exactly like pi. It goes on forever and does not repeat. That is not an imaginary number. It's something like that. What's the other kind? Say it if you know it. Irrational. Good. It's an irrational number. So anyway, so if it's got this base of 2.1718 blah, 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 then basically it's 2.718 to the x equals 2. You just have to use a calculator to get the exact answer. Or another way to say it is, you'd just have to do this, because x is already alone, right? Log 2 divided by log e. That would do it. And there's another shortcut I'll show you on the day when you actually learn log base e. The other kind are, they'll give you this fancy log equation, and then you just stick the numbers into the equation. That's another kind of problem that you'll see, and those are easy. As long as we give you the equation, you just stick the numbers in the right spots and solve it. So it's pretty much like this, except it doesn't give you the equation. You have to stick numbers into an equation to get this, and then you have to know how to solve it. All right, that's a brief preview of what's to come. The last thought is you could graph these. And you can graph them by making an XY chart like anything else. And as long as we give you nice numbers, you'll be able to graph them. All right, 9 to the 1/2 equals x. Technically, there's a parentheses here, but does it really matter this time? No, it's only one number. So 9 to the 1/2 or 9 in parentheses to the 1/2. Either way, it's what? 3. Done with that one. This one. 36 to the negative 1/2 equals x. Remember, the negative up there does not make the answer negative. Flips it. So what's the answer? 1/6 is correct. Now, what if your life depended on it? You're sending a man to the moon, and you do a wrong calculation, and they're going to crash on the surface of the moon. Would you double check? Of course you would, unless you're doing the mission to Mars. They did a mission to Mars where they launched a satellite that was supposed to go around Mars, and it crashed on the surface of, it burned up in the atmosphere on the way in. It took them forever to get it up there. It cost billions of dollars to get it up there, and it was all because of a calculation mistake.
That is why you triple check.
Yes, you should triple check. And in fact, who knows, it might have even been triple checked, and then people just didn't notice that they were doing the calculation in meters instead of feet. That's all it took. Happened. Really happened. Either that or that's the cover story, and really there's Martians who shot down the satellite.
Well,
I mean, it's probably the Martians who shot down the satellite. But they're just telling us that because they want to keep us in the dark. Kind of like mushrooms. All right. You grow them in the dark. Okay. Anyway, moving on. This one, part C, 1/6 to the second equals x. And again, I hope you're like, whoa, this is really easy. It should feel that way because it is. 1/6 to the second would just be, well, you can square both of them. 1 squared is 1, 6 squared is 36. The answer is 1/36. Done. All right. Yeah, there's some challenging ones when they get extra freaky fractions, but it's still doable. This one, I would say, considering this not in the calc section yet, is probably the scariest looking problem of them all. So you say 9/28 to the x equals 28/9 to the 11th. And again, if you can make the bases the same, which is, they're really close to being the same right now, then you can, once you get the bases the same, you can set the exponents equal. So it's not x equals 11, but it's close to that. So nowhere near as scary as you'd think. Okay, there is a section near the bottom where they start saying use a calc if it's too difficult. That's sort of a challenge to those of you that are kind of smart, that you could probably do this one without a calculator. But if you can't handle it, fine, use the calc. And then the last section of the worksheet is just plain old use the calc, because their problems are too complicated. You're not going to be able to know what log base 9 of 57 is unless you use a calculator, or you're got a brain that can memorize huge amounts of log tables, because that's how you'd have to do it. Okay. Unless you can make 57 in a 9 to the something power, because, you know, then if the base and this base were the same, then it would be the power. But 9 to the something doesn't make 57 very nicely. Some weird decimal. All right. Hardest one other than that is probably this one, and it's just, if you know what log base 5 of 125 is, all of a sudden the problem's easy. And I know what it is. I hope you do. All right. That's all the advice that I have for you on today's. It's a nice, easy review day. Only a 16-minute long video. Yay.